I never thought I'd see the day my own son would lock me out of my home. That little yellow house on Maple Drive wasn't just a building to me, it was a living scrapbook of my life. Every wall had fingerprints of memories. My husband, God rest his soul, built the front porch with his bare hands, one summer when we had more love than money. The oak tree in the front yard was planted by Ethan himself, back when he was 8 and wanted to grow something taller than Dad. Now, 30 years later, I stood outside that same door, suitcase in hand, my key refusing to turn. It was late afternoon, and the sun cast a golden glow across the neighbourhood. I remember thinking, maybe the lock's just jammed. I tried again, harder. Nothing. My stomach tightened. I knocked gently at first, then louder. After a moment, the chain slid back and the door cracked open. My son stood there, arms crossed, eyes cold. "Mom," he said flatly, like he hadn't expected me but wasn't exactly surprised. "You're back early." I said I'd only be gone a week, I answered, smiling nervously. "The bus came in early. Why's the lock not working?" He exhaled through his nose that long, irritated sigh I'd heard 1,000 times since he turned 15. "About that," he said. "You don't live here anymore." At first, I thought he was joking. Ethan always had a twisted sense of humour, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. "What did you just say?" "This house is mine now, Mom. You signed the transfer papers a few months back, remember? I told you it was better for taxes, to protect the property from probate." I felt my knees weaken. I gripped the door frame to steady myself. "That was supposed to be temporary," I whispered. "You said you'd file it under my trust." He shrugged, almost smirking. "Things change, it's done. I've already talked to the county office, it's official." My throat went dry. "Ethan, this is my home. Your father and I." "Dad's gone," he snapped. "And you can't take care of a house this size. I'm doing what's best for everyone." His words hit me like a slap. "I can take care of myself," I said quietly. "I'm not some fragile old woman," he chuckled bitterly. "Mum, you're 68. It's time to let go. Go stay with Aunt Carol or something. I'll send your things once I sort them out." Then he did it. He closed the door, right in my face. For a few seconds, I stood there frozen, hearing the lock click. The same lock I'd replaced after his father passed. Because I wanted to feel safe again. The same door where Ethan once taped crayon drawings saying, "Welcome home, Mom," after my long shifts at the office. Now it was just wood between us. I don't remember walking back to my car. I just remember sitting there, staring at that house, trying to understand how love could rot so quietly over the years. That night, I stayed in the car. The air was cold, and the leather seat stiff beneath me. I kept the engine off to save fuel, but I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face distant, greedy, a stranger in my son's skin. At 2 a.m., I pulled out the old photo album I kept in my purse, the one I used to embarrass him with at family gatherings. There he was, Ethan, at age 5, grinning with a missing tooth, holding his first fish with pride. His little hands once reached for mine in every crowd. Now, he wouldn't even let me inside my own home. I cried until I couldn't anymore. Then, somewhere between heartbreak and exhaustion, something inside me hardened. See, I wasn't just some helpless old lady. Before I retired, I spent 40 years as an accountant reading numbers, contracts, fine print. People used to joke that I could smell a discrepancy from a mile away, and if Ethan had tricked me with paperwork, there would be proof. The next morning, I went to the bank first. My account was untouched small blessings. Then to the county recorder's office. The young clerk behind the counter looked confused when I explained my situation, but when she pulled up the record, her eyebrows shot up. She said. "This transfer looks odd. It was filed under your son's name, but the signature looks like it was scanned. I leaned in. Scanned. She nodded, whispering, "Like a copy of a copy. It's legal on paper, but not clean. Can I get a certified copy of that deed?" She printed it out and slid it across the counter. "Mom," she said softly, "I talked to a lawyer. Something's not right here." I thanked her, folded the document, and slipped it into my purse. But I didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. On the drive back, I passed Maple Drive again. My house, his house, now sat there like a stranger wearing familiar clothes. A delivery truck was parked out front. Through the window, I saw Ethan showing someone around, gesturing like a proud owner. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just keeping the house, he was planning to sell it. The betrayal burned through my chest, but I kept driving. That night, I checked into a small roadside motel. The wallpaper peeled and the bed creaked, but it was quiet. I laid out the deed copy, a pen, and a notepad. If Ethan thought he could outsmart me, he'd forgotten who raised him. I took a deep breath and wrote at the top of the page. Every lie leaves a paper trail. Then I started tracing it. First, the documents I remembered signing, then, every conversation we'd had about estate planning. I even wrote down the dates I'd kept his texts. I knew when he'd come by, when he'd called, when he'd acted too nice, as I wrote. A plan started forming, not out of rage but out of precision. I would find every flaw in his forgery, every inconsistency, every thread that could unravel his scheme. I wasn't just his mother anymore, I was his reckoning, and this time, the numbers were going to tell the truth. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. It wasn't the motel alarm that stirred me, it was something sharper, colder, alive inside me. The shock had burned away, leaving focus. 40 years of financial work had trained my mind to chase details until they told the truth. I sat on the bed, my notepad open, and went line by line, through what I knew. Every time Ethan had asked me to sign something, every odd phone call about property protection, every smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he'd played the part of a caring son so well that I'd mistaken manipulation for love. But that ended. Now my first stop was the bank. Again, I asked to speak to the branch manager, a woman named Helen, who used to come into my old office with her husband every tax season. When she saw me, she smiled warmly until she noticed the tremor in my hands. "Helen," I said, my voice low, "I need to know if any large transfers or withdrawals have been made from my joint accounts recently. Anything involving my son, Ethan Miller." Her brows furrowed. "Joint? I don't see him listed on your current accounts." I frowned. That can't be right. He insisted we consolidate last year. I signed some forms. Helen checked her screen, then shook her head. There was an attempt to add his name, but the application was incomplete. It was missing. "Your in-person verification signature." I exhaled slowly. That meant he hadn't gotten access, but he'd tried. Good. "Failed attempt meant evidence. Can I have a copy of that?" I asked. She printed the application and slid it across the desk. "Margaret, is everything okay?" I met her eyes. "No," I said quietly, "but it will be." From the bank I went straight to the county records office again. The same clerk from before, Judy, waved me over. "Back again already?" she asked with a sympathetic smile. I nodded. "I need every transaction related to parcel number 482037, my old address. Deeds, title transfers, anything filed in the last 2 years." She clicked away at her keyboard, then turned her monitor slightly. "There's your transfer. Dated May 4th. But wait." She frowned. "Here's something odd. The notary signature is the same as another file from Ethan's business paperwork, same handwriting. Same date stamp." I leaned in. "Can you print both?" "Technically I shouldn't. I placed a 20 on the counter. Please." Her lips twitched. "I didn't see that." She printed the Documents, there it was in black, and White Ethan's notary had notarized both his business filing and my property deed on the exact same day. Impossible unless he'd forged it himself, or bribed someone to reuse the stamp. Either way, it was illegal. I tucked the papers into my binder. The weight of it felt like power returning to my hands. Over the next few days, I started collecting quietly. Every message, every receipt, every phone call. I even called Ethan a few times, pretending to be naive, the pitiful mother still confused about all this property stuff. "Mum," he'd say, half amused, half dismissive, "I told you it's fine. You'll still benefit when I sell it. Think of it like a long-term investment." "Oh, I see," I'd murmur sweetly. "And what will you do with their money?" He chuckled. "Maybe buy a bigger place. Something I deserve." Every call was recorded. Every smug word captured forever. Meanwhile, I reached out to an old colleague, Robert Langley, a real estate agent I'd worked with back in my accounting days. He'd always been straight as an arrow, the kind of man who could sniff out a shady deal before the ink dried. When I told him what happened, he was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Margaret, do you have a copy of the original deed?" "I do, and I have proof the signature on the transfer was forged." He exhaled slowly. "Then technically, the property's still yours. If the signature was fraudulent, the title transfer's voidable. We can reverse it quietly if we move fast." I smiled for the first time in days. "Tell me what to do." We spent a week piecing everything together. Robert handled the filings, and I prepared the paper trail. It was meticulous work, every affidavit, every timestamp. My old skills came flooding back like muscle memory. At night, while the world slept, I sat in that dim motel room surrounded by stacks of paper. I'd highlight inconsistencies, annotate margins, and talk softly to the empty room like I was teaching again. "See, Ethan, this is where you went wrong. You changed the beneficiary. Before the title was finalized, you forgot I kept copies." The irony made me smile. He'd forgotten that I used to audit people for a living. On the 7th day, Robert called. "We did it," he said. "The title's been restored to your name. The county confirmed the fraud, and I might have already found a buyer." I froze. "A buyer?" "Yes. Young couple, first-time homeowners. They love the place. Full offer, no contingencies." I gripped the phone tighter. My home sold? The thought twisted my heart, but then I pictured Ethan smirking, showing that house off to friends like it was his trophy. "Yes," I said finally. "Sell it." When the sale closed, Robert met me in person to hand over the check. "You want to hear something funny?" he said, grinning. "Your son called my office yesterday." My heart skipped. "What did he say?" "He wanted to list the property, your property. My assistant told him we already had an offer pending. He flipped out, asked who the seller was." I laughed quietly. The sound brittle but satisfying. "And what did you tell him?" Robert smiled. "That we don't disclose seller information until after the sale closes." For the first time in months, I felt free. I walked out of that office lighter than air. The house was gone, but so was the power he held over me. That evening, I sat by the motel window, the check on the table beside me, and watched the sunset. I should have felt grief, but instead I felt a calm resolve. I hadn't just taken my home back. I'd taken myself back. Still, a part of me knew this wasn't the end. Ethan was going to find out soon, and when he did, there'd be a storm. I just hoped I'd be there to see his face when the Realtor called and told him the truth. The phone rang on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that feels ordinary right before the world changes. I was sitting at a corner table in a quiet cafe, nursing a cup of black tea and pretending to read the newspaper. My mind wasn't on the news, though it was on Maple Drive. I hadn't driven by since the sale. I didn't want to see it, not yet. Letting go meant letting go completely. Then, my phone buzzed once, twice. I glanced down, incoming call. "Langley Realty, Ethan Miller." It took me a second to realize what I was seeing, the family phone plan still, linked our lines, and that meant I could see his calls. I smiled. It was happening. Imagined the scene on the other end. Ethan sitting at the kitchen island, my kitchen coffee mug in hand. Smug as ever. Then the Realtor's voice on the line, calm, professional, oblivious to the chaos they were about to unleash. I could almost hear it. Mr. Miller. This is Robert Langley's office calling to confirm the closing on the Maple Drive. Property. The sale has officially gone through. The new owners. We'll be moving in this weekend. And then silence, followed by disbelief. Followed by panic. My phone buzzed again this time. My number lighting up on the screen. Ethan was calling me. I let it ring twice before answering. Calm as still water. Hello, Ethan? Mom? His voice was sharp, frantic. What the hell did you do? I just got a call from some realtor saying the house was sold. My house, what's going on? I took a slow sip of my tea. Oh, that's right, I forgot to mention it's not your house, it's mine. Was mine, I suppose, until I sold it. You what? He sputtered. You can't do that. The deed, the forged deed? I interrupted, my voice cool. The one you and your little notary friend cooked up? It's been voided. County verified everything. You committed fraud. Ethan. There was a long silence. I could almost hear him breathing short. Uneven, panicked. Mom, he said finally, his tone dropping to something almost pitiful. I was going to fix it. I was going to make things right. You didn't have to... I didn't have to what? I snapped, finally letting my voice rise. The people in the cafe turned their heads, but I didn't care. Didn't have to fight for the home your father built. Didn't have to sleep in my car because my own son threw me out. Didn't have to beg the county clerk to show me what you'd done. He said nothing. Ethan, I continued, quieter now, but with a steadiness that scared even me. You took everything your father and I worked for and treated it like a pawn ticket, and you thought you could get away with it. He tried again, grasping for control. Mom, please, I needed the money for the business. You know how bad it's been. I thought if I could just... Lie to me? I said, use me? His voice cracked. No. I thought I'd fix it before you found out. I laughed bitterly. You've been underestimating me your whole life. You forget who taught you to count. He started yelling again, words like thief. A betrayal. You'll regret this. But they barely registered. The part of me that used to tremble when he raised his voice was gone. I don't regret a thing, I said. And just so you know, that call you just got, it's not the only one coming. What do you mean? Oh, I imagine the county office might reach out soon, and perhaps the IRS or your business partner. I made sure a few envelopes found their way to the right desks. He went silent again, the weight of it landing heavy between us. When he spoke next, his voice was small. You'd really ruin your own son? I took a deep breath. No, Ethan, you did that. I just stopped covering for you. Then I hung up. That night, I didn't feel victory. I felt relief. The kind that comes after a long illness, painful, but cleansing. I sat by the motel window, the cool wind slipping through the cracks, and watched the streetlights blur in the glass. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. The next morning, I checked my voicemail. 2 new messages, both from Ethan. The first was angry, full of shouting. Accusations, curses. The second was quiet. Mom, he said. His voice breaking. They froze my business account. They said there's an investigation. I don't know what to do. Please. I'm sorry I played that one twice. Not because I enjoyed it, but because I wanted to remember the sound of realization the moment he finally understood that actions have consequences. 2 days later, I met with Robert again to finalize some loose ends. He slid a manila envelope across the desk, the final sale documents. The cleared payment confirmation, the deed transfer. All clean, he said. Legally airtight. Thank you. Robert, I said, meaning it. For everything. He smiled. You did the hard part. Margaret, most people would have rolled over. I looked out the window. Most people don't get betrayed by their own child. He nodded sadly. You're not alone there. As I left his office, my phone buzzed again. Ethan's number. I almost ignored it, but something inside me said to answer. He didn't yell this time. He didn't even sound angry. He just sounded lost. Mom, he whispered. They're saying I could face charges. I can't afford a lawyer. I don't know what to do. Maybe, I said gently. It's time you start learning what to do when no one cleans up your messes for you. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Barely audible, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. So am I." Ethan, but some apologies come too late. That evening, I packed my things from the motel. I had somewhere new to be, a little seaside cottage I'd quietly bought years ago, after my husband passed. Paid in cash, in my name alone. As I drove away, I passed Maple Drive one last time. Another voicemail from Ethan. I didn't listen to it. I deleted it without opening it. Some doors, once closed, never need to be opened again. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. Ethan's real downfall was only beginning. The IRS didn't move fast, but when they did, they were thorough, and I'd made sure his name was on every page of every fraudulent document. I didn't need to lift another finger. His choices would handle the rest. It's strange how quiet justice sounds. There's no dramatic music, no applause, no flashing lights, just the steady rhythm of time, and the echo of consequences catching up. It had been 6 weeks since the sale finalised, 6 weeks since Ethan's world began to crack. I hadn't spoken to him since that last phone call, the one where he sounded like a frightened boy again. The boy who used to cling to my apron when thunder rolled outside. Somewhere inside me, that image still lived, but the man he became he killed. That boy long ago. The first letter came from the county clerk's office, forwarded to my new address at the cottage. It was an official notice, confirming the voiding of the fraudulent transfer. They included a note from the investigator. "Appreciate your cooperation in helping us uncover this scheme." That word hit me like a weight. To them, it was paperwork. To me, it was betrayal carved into bone. The seaside air did wonders for me. I started waking up early again, taking long walks along the shore. I painted a little, read old novels, and even joined a small group of widows who met every Thursday for tea. We'd talk about everything: gardens, grandchildren, aches, and sometimes the people who'd broken our hearts. It surprised me how many of them had similar stories: sons who'd borrowed money and never paid it back, daughters who'd drained accounts for emergencies, nieces who'd stolen jewellery. One woman, Evelyn, said something that stuck with me. "People think getting old means getting weak," she said. "But what they forget is we've survived everything already." That night I wrote it in my journal. We've survived everything already. A month later I got another call, this time from an unfamiliar number. It was Robert, my Realtor friend. "Margaret," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Just thought you should know the investigation into your son's forgery." "It's been escalated," I froze. "Escalated how?" "Federal level. IRS and State Fraud Division. Turns out the documents he falsified for your house weren't the only ones. His business filings are riddled with irregularities." I didn't say anything for a long while. I just stared out at the sea, waves curling against the sand like time folding in on itself. Finally, I whispered, "So, it's happening." Robert sighed. "Yeah, they'll probably contact him soon. Might even make the papers." When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. For months, revenge had been the fuel that kept me going. Every late-night document search, every quiet phone call, every lawyer meeting, it had all been for this moment. But now that it was real, I realised something. I didn't want to see him destroyed. I just wanted to stop hurting. Then came the knock. It was a Saturday morning. I was sitting on the porch, trimming lavender stems, when a car pulled into my gravel driveway. A dark sedan. 2 men in suits stepped out, one carrying a briefcase, the other holding an envelope. "Mrs. Miller?" one asked. "Yes?" "I'm Agent Rodriguez, IRS Fraud Division. This is my associate, Agent Chan. We wanted to thank you for your cooperation during the inquiry." I blinked. "Inquiry?" He handed me the envelope. "You'll want to see this. Official Notice of Restitution and Property Record Updates. Case 4482 Bethan Miller." My heart sank a little hearing his name. "He's in trouble, then?" The agent nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Multiple counts of falsifying financial documents. We recovered assets under your name that were tied up in his company's accounts. You should receive restitution in a few weeks." I took the envelope in both hands, feeling its weight. "And Ethan?" "He's cooperating," the agent said carefully. "It's likely he'll face penalties and probation, but not prison given his cooperation." I nodded slowly. "Good. Maybe that's enough." They gave polite smiles, then drove off, their car shrinking into a dot on the coastal road. I sat there for a long time, staring at the sea. My son wasn't going to jail. He wasn't ruined. But he was no longer untouchable. For the first time, he would live in a world where his actions mattered. That was enough justice for me. A week later, I got a letter handwritten trembling lines that I recognised immediately. Ethan's handwriting. Mom, I don't know where to start. They froze everything. The business is gone, Lisa left. I've had to move into a rental outside town. I don't blame you anymore. You were right. I lost myself chasing something I didn't deserve. I'm sorry for what I did. I hope someday you can forgive me. Ethan, I read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and slipped it into my drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It's not about excusing someone, it's about freeing yourself from the need to keep hating them. That night, I walked down to the beach and stood at the edge of the water. The tide crept up over my shoes, cool and cleansing. I whispered into the wind, I forgive you, Ethan, but I'll never forget. And somehow, that was enough. Months passed. Seasons changed. The pain dulled, the bitterness faded. My little cottage bloomed with wildflowers, and the neighbours became friends. Life grew gentle again, not perfect, but peaceful. Sometimes I'd hear a certain song on the radio one my husband used to hum while painting the porch. And I'd think of the life we built, the one Ethan nearly stole, and the woman I had to become to protect it. I learned something powerful in all of this. People assume revenge is loudfire, fury, chaos. But real revenge is quiet. It's walking away without looking back. It's sleeping peacefully while they're up all night worrying about what you'll do next. It's peace. One evening, as the sun set over the water, Robert stopped by for tea. He looked around the cottage and smiled. You seem lighter these days, Margaret. I poured him a cup. I am. I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? His guilt, I said softly. His mistakes. His choices. They were never mine to bear. Robert nodded, then looked out at the sea. You know, he said, you should write this down someday. The whole story. People could learn from it. I smiled faintly. Oh, I already have. I just haven't decided who to send it to. We laughed real laughter. The kind that comes from surviving the worst and living to tell about it. As he left, I stood at the window and watched the horizon fade into dusk. The world felt wide again. Free. Sometimes I think about that night, the one where Ethan slammed the door and said, You don't live here anymore. He was right. In a way. I don't live there anymore. I live here in peace, in freedom, in the quiet strength of knowing I took back what was mine. And I'll tell you this much, if anyone ever underestimates an old woman again, they'd better be ready for the storm she hides behind her smile.